There is a way to find your purpose, and you don't have to get caught up in that loop of relentless search. When you have that switch in consciousness, that's the moment that you know suddenly it seems so clear, because that obstruction from the ego is not there anymore. So not to practice it, you're probably missing out on the greatest transformation that can happen to you. A lot of people are in search of their purpose in life, and this might be you. This was certainly me a few years ago. What do I do with my life? And this is because a lot of people are feeling dissatisfied and unfulfilled with their current life, with their current lifestyle and relationships and their jobs and careers. It's like people are starting to realize this inner knowing within them that there has to be something more than this, and that they're meant for something more. But the problem is when people become stuck in this relentless search phase, it's very easy to get caught up in the loop of search of what their purpose is, because they get lost and they don't know where to start, they don't know where to look, and it can become very discouraging very fast. And so what happens then is it causes despair for people to just basically go back to their normal lives, back to their old self, and live a life of quiet desperation for the rest of their lives. There is a way to find your purpose, and you don't have to get caught up in that loop of relentless search, because there are actually two purposes in a person's life. There is the internal primary one, and then there is the external and secondary one. And that first internal purpose is one of awakening to your higher self. It is you stemming from a higher state of consciousness from your higher self. And what that means is you've done enough practice to the point where you have rid yourself a lot of the egoic tendencies and egoic thoughts and egoic feelings and emotions. It's like you have peeled off enough of the layers of your ego that it creates a clear pathway to channel, to manifest for your higher self to come through you. And then when you're operating from your higher self, that's what's called the path of least resistance, because there is no more resistance from the egoic tendencies. There's a clear pathway. You are free from all those things. You've released them. So your higher self is then able to light up your higher path for you to live your higher life. And a lot of people will skip this one step because they don't know, and they'll go straight into the secondary and external purpose of life. What is my purpose? And they start to search for things outside of them. And that's why they get lost, because they don't have that internal compass, that North Star that's going to eventually, inevitably guide them and lead the way into their external purpose. This is the whole concept of as within, so without. Whatever is inside will manifest itself on the outside. And that is also the concept of a new heaven and a new earth. The new heaven being the internal state of consciousness that is manifesting into the outer. And so if you're seeing in your life a lot of incoherence, disharmony, and chaos, it's because you've probably haven't done the inner work yet in order to align yourself with your higher self and operate it from a place of that centeredness. It is a priority. If you don't have that first connection with your higher self, the higher consciousness, the I am consciousness, then it will take you maybe 10, 20 years, 20 times more effort to find that external purpose. Whereas if you're connected directly, first and foremost with your higher self, then everything reveals itself moment by moment, because you're operating from a place of full presence. Every step that you take forward is a transcendence of time and space. So it's no longer attached to the patterns of the past. You're creating a new story with each step that you take. When you're connected to your higher self, this automatically opens up your spiritual realm. So it's normal then for you to start getting insights and to develop spiritual gifts. It's just this very clear signal within you that tells you what to do and how to do it. suddenly it seems so clear because that obstruction from the ego is not there anymore. When you're connected to your higher consciousness, your third eye begins to open and you begin to become naturally just more intuitive, and you begin to know things, and it's no longer a struggle. Operating from a place of higher consciousness means that you're directly being guided by your higher self, and you begin to just get insights every moment by moment. All you have to do is the first step from a place of presence. So you're no longer creating thoughts from the ego, fear and self-doubt and intimidation. Those are all feelings and thoughts from the ego. But when you practice connection to the higher self, those feelings aren't there anymore. You got rid of them. And so it's just easier to take that first step and let that develop. The spiritual awakening, right? That moment when you awaken, because sometimes it can seem that way. It can be gradual, but also it could sometimes be quite spontaneous, and it could feel, you'll notice the contrast when that happens. When you have that switch in consciousness, you're going to feel it. That's the moment that you know that you've crossed over onto the higher consciousness. And you'll come back and forth between both consciousness levels, but the goal is to practice accessing that higher consciousness and to awaken as much and as often as you can until that becomes your natural state. So then the spiritual awakening process, that is where the journey's at, the hero's journey, the spiritual journey, the highs and lows, the dark nights of the soul, the breakthroughs, and increasing of self-awareness, the inner work, the inner alchemy into a full transformation, transmutation, metamorphosis. You know, we live in a state where we're always looking for instant gratification. Show me proof, show me the tangible, the visible. No one wants to do the boring work anymore. No one wants to do the thing that takes a little more time. Just like how you practice to cook, just how you practice to play that sport and to play that instrument, connecting to your higher self is a skill that can be acquired by anybody who has the will to practice and the patience to go through the progress of the connection to a higher consciousness. At this point, I would say connecting to your higher consciousness is a choice, knowing what you know. And so not to practice it, you're probably missing out on the greatest transformation that can happen to you. There are two practices that you can do to connect to your higher consciousness and your higher self. And the first is breathwork. And I'm not necessarily talking about the holotropic or the intense breathworks. I'm simply talking about breath itself, the way that we should be breathing more often than not. Breathe, in Latin, you say spirare, which means spirit. Spirit is what animates us. So breath means spirit. It's what gives us life. It's the breath of life. And breath work, what it really does, it calms down your nervous systems and it centers all your chakras. So you're coming back to a place of centeredness and you're operating from a place of where you should always really be operating from. And secondly, you have to meditate. And the best practice that have worked for me in the past years is using the mantra, I am. But words are empty if there's no intention, understanding, and meaning behind them. So I feel like this is the part where a lot of teachings kind of skip over, but it's actually the most important part. And God is in the details. So when you are saying the mantra, I am, mean every single syllable and word that you're saying. Realize what that means. I am. And do that until you start to feel the I am consciousness. And secondly, there is the indirect way of practicing. And this is more when you are just living life in your wakefulness state. And you have to do the inner work, the shadow work, where every time you realize this old pattern within you, to shine the light of consciousness onto these unconscious behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. And the idea is to also recognize what you are doing, witness it from a light of consciousness while you're doing the dishes, while you're talking to your kids at happy hour, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And slowly but surely, with time and practice, you will begin to notice a switch in your energy, a switch in your vibration, and in the way that you speak, in the way that you do things. And insights come more easily. And by insights, I mean from your higher self, from the lack of obstruction from ego. So intuition, imagination, ideas, which create the intention to act from your higher self. It no longer becomes about the destination, and it rather becomes about the journey. It becomes about the steps that you take within the journey, where each step is coming from a place of the I am, the presence, the transcendence of time and space, just doing from a place of being. If this video resonated with you, please subscribe and like. I am a spiritual guide, and if you are looking for connecting to your higher self, and if you're looking to connecting to your higher consciousness, and you need some guidance doing that, I provide one-on-one coaching sessions. The link is in my bio, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.